Excellencies, distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, fellow advocates of artistic freedom, dear arts and culture professionals from around the world, a warm welcome to all of you on behalf of the Swedish Arts Council. I am Kajsa Ravin, Director General. Artists may entertain, provide meaning in our lives, and offer new perspectives. But they also contribute to important social debates, contesting meanings and revisiting inherited ideas and concepts. The vitality of artistic creativity is essential for the development of vibrant cultures and the proper functioning of democratic societies. Artistic freedom is crucial for individuals and their societies to express their humanity and develop their worldviews. Regrettably, artistic freedom and artistic expressions often come under attack due to political, religious, cultural, moral, or economic interests. Artists and culture professionals are important carriers of democratic values, and as the democratic space is shrinking, people's and artists' freedoms and rights are curtailed. We see it in an increase in censorship, persecution, imprisonment, and even the killings of artists. Josette Bushnell-Mingo said last night that art can never be a crime. But let us work together to make this true. I am honored to co-host the 9th World Summit with IFACCA, and I thank you all for your time and effort to participate. Bringing together representatives from 85 countries, getting to this point of finally meeting has been an exciting journey, I can assure you. Postponing the summit gave us a chance to establish the theme artistic freedom further in several contexts. We released the discussion paper together with IFACCA. At Mondia Kult, Sweden and the Nordics brought up the theme. At each meeting within the 2005 convention, we emphasized the importance of artistic freedom. And during Sweden's presidency for the EU, it is a key topic within cultural policy discussions. Let us use this unique meeting, mixing director generals, artists, civil society, scholars, and politicians to learn from each other, listen well, and respect our different backgrounds. Let us cultivate an atmosphere of openness, curiosity, and inclusivity, reflecting and respect our different experiences. Let us work together to safeguard artistic freedom, recognizing its importance in fostering a diverse, democratic, and culturally rich society. Yesterday, during the opening ceremony and the Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award, we heard the fantastic and inspiring voices of artists. Tonight, at the Museum of Modern Art, they are opening exclusively for us. There, you can also meet artists currently in safe havens in Swedish cities within the International Cities of Refuge network. 2 of them are from Iran, where revolution of women's rights is taking place as we speak. We also have a colleague from Ukraine here defying the war. The world is facing several challenges, and we need international solidarity to be able to handle them. Today, we embark on a journey of dialogue to explore, discover, and discuss the conditions for artistic freedom and how we can safeguard and strengthen it. In the speakers program, Our approach is based on UNESCO's widely recognized definition of artistic freedom, which comprises two key components: the freedom for artists to create and distribute diverse cultural expressions without censorship or interference, and the right of all citizens to access and enjoy these works for the well-being of societies. To safeguard artistic freedom, we must take action in both areas. Although every country faces unique challenges, we all have the potential to improve artistic freedom. And it is our duty to determine the course of action. Let us not just imagine a world where we can improve conditions for arts and culture. My vision is that we can take decisive action together to make it a reality. As we conclude this summit, I call on each of you to be an ambassador for artistic freedom, igniting change and fostering a world where creativity flourishes and artists can thrive. We could not have created this World Summit without our co-hosts, many funders, partners, participants, and collaborators, to whom I would like to express my deepest gratitude for your trust and generosity. Again, to all of you, a warm welcome on this journey together, beginning today on Press Freedom Day. And now please welcome our State Secretary for Culture, Karin Svanborg-Sjövall.
Kajsa. Now, can you hear me? Yes. Dear delegates, welcome to Stockholm and to the 9th World Summits on Arts and Culture. It is a true honor that the International Federation of Arts Councils and Culture Agencies, together with the Swedish Arts Council, has chosen to organize this meeting in Sweden on the important theme of safeguarding artistic freedom. Policy as well as cultural practices can sometimes be surprisingly similar in different parts of the world, but they can obviously, of course, also be very different. And whether it's one way or the other, I think we always have a lot to learn from each other, not least, perhaps, when it comes to safeguarding measures. John F. Kennedy put it well when he said that if art is to nourish the roots of our culture, society must set the artist free to follow his vision wherever it takes him. When this government took office in October, Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson described culture as an indefeasible part of an open society. He gave a solemn pledge that Swedish cultural policy shall be guided by the principle of an arm's length, and underlined that culture and its practitioners have a vital role to play to keep the democratic conversation alive. Thus, freedom of expression is at the very core of Swedish cultural policy. Culture should be a dynamic, a challenging and independent force, which of course means that artists and writers must be able to work freely without intervention, censorship or persecution. That doesn't mean to say that culture cannot also be a uniting force in a highly polarized age. It can be and must be both, a driver for development and dynamism, as well as comfort and a provider of stability when society changes too fast for comfort for many people. Yet we find ourselves in a place where numerous challenges to artistic freedom and freedom of expression needs to be dealt with simultaneously. We have different kinds of culture wars that threaten not just some of the great wins of the past, but also important future gains for all of mankind. There is cancel culture that silence important voices. There is hate speech and racism that silence others. And we of course also have the very literal culture wars of the kind that we now see, for example, in Ukraine, where Russia is attempting not just to dissolve national borders and obliterate a young democracy, but the very memory and identity of an independent Ukrainian culture. At a time when authoritarian forces in many parts of the world want to control people's thoughts and creativity, limit the scope for opinion and action, and to silence critics, then our work to promote the arts and freedom of expression and to support the voice bearers of democracy is more important than it's been in a long time. And this support for a vivid cultural life can, like the threat it meets, also come in many different shapes and forms. That cultural creators can work under reasonable conditions is also of decisive importance for artistic freedom. Remunerating artists at arm's length from cultural politics allows art to develop freely and artists to define what art can be. Without artists, there of course can be no contemporary arts. And without new generations that continue to discover the thrill of the arts, there can be no future. It's of great importance that we all work to ensure cultural access for children and for young people. This spring, Sweden holds the presidency of the Council of the European Union. And the Swedish presidency in the field of culture and media is, to put it short, focusing on freedom. Media freedom, artistic freedom, freedom to create, and of course also ways to contribute to a free Ukraine. During this spring, the Cultural Affairs Committee is focusing on the Council conclusions that will be presented to the Council regarding at-risk and displaced artists, which is an especially important topic now, due again to Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine. The conclusions will emphasize the importance of protecting and supporting at-risk and displaced artists, and to allow them to freely continue their artistic endeavors without risking reprisals. We hope and believe that these are standpoints and conclusions that can be shared by each and everyone in this room. So to conclude, I wish you all fruitful discussions during these days in Stockholm, and would again like to say thank you to IFACCA and to the Swedish Arts Council for organizing this important meeting. And thank you all for coming and for making this meeting possible. And thank you for your attention.
And now I give the floor to Sweden's Ambassador for Human Rights, Democracy and the Rule of Law, Cecilia Ruthström-Ruin.
Dear delegates to this 9th World Summit of the IFACCA, you have, most of you, traveled from far and some from near to Stockholm for this first in-person summit since before the pandemic. I'm glad that the sun is welcoming you, and I am, on behalf of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, very honored to extend also my warm welcome in addition to the welcomes that you have heard from the Director General and the State Secretary. This summit provides a very important platform for dialogue and in-depth discussions between cultural actors, artists, and decision makers from all over the world. This year, you have chosen the theme of artistic freedom and how we can safeguard its existence. This is indeed a very timely topic. Artistic freedom is a fundamental part of freedom of expression. It is protected in international law by Article 19 of the UN Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and it is an indispensable pillar of democracy. Artistic freedom breaks new ground, challenges ingrown conceptions, stimulates critical thinking, and makes us look at reality from otherwise unseen angles. Works of art, such as literature, visual artwork, and satire, contribute to the free exchange of information and opinions, also on controversial cultural, political, and social issues. So artistic freedom challenges, but also possesses power. For almost 2 decades now, we have seen a global democratic decline and a shrinking of civic space in all corners of the world. It has taken a heavy toll on the cultural sector. Cultural actors are being controlled, harassed, threatened, imprisoned, and even murdered in many parts of the world. This is clearly visible also not far from us, in Russia, where the increased internal repression against its own population is directly tied to its illegal and unprovoked aggression against Ukraine. The war gravely affects European security, but it also affects Russia itself. Human rights and freedoms are severely and increasingly restricted. Internal repression has worsened dramatically. The regime eliminates any opportunity to express independent perspectives, arresting tens of thousands of anti-war activists and closing all spaces for free expression, including artistic. According to recent information from Freedom House, concerts have been raided and musicians fined for anti-war expressions. Dissenting filmmakers and writers have been put on wanted lists. Art exhibitions have been censored, book bans proposed, and theater leaders dismissed. The same is true in Russia's accomplice in the aggression against Ukraine, the regime of Belarus. There, all forms of dissent are brutally repressed. The number of political prisoners has reached about 1,500, including many cultural figures and media professionals, as well as Nobel Peace Prize laureate Ales Bialiatski. It is no coincidence that cultural actors are silenced in oppressive regimes, but it can never be tolerated. Also, elsewhere in the world, artistic freedom has declined or is under threat as the global trend of autocratization continues. This development must stop. Dear delegates, artistic and cultural expressions create space for us to reflect on ourselves and on our societies. Our ability to make sense of the world through art is a crucial tenet of democracy, perhaps even more urgent as we endure crises. Sweden has a long-standing commitment to freedom of expression. In these challenging times, freedom of expression must be defended, both online and offline, and journalists and human rights defenders must be protected. Our State Secretary mentioned Sweden's ongoing presidency of the European Union. One of our priorities as part of our responsibility is defending human rights defenders, defending persons who have used their freedom of expression to voice concerns. In Sweden's development cooperation, assistance to the cultural sector and its actors is an integrated part of our democracy support. Sweden works with culture from a rights perspective, which actually makes us a little bit unique. Through our development agency, SIDA, we support platforms and protection for cultural actors. We support UNESCO's work with policies and norms, and we support a program for artistic freedom, just to name a few examples. And the Swedish government and the Ministry for Foreign Affairs is, of course, we are proud enablers also of this important event. Through the Swedish Institute, the government also supports international projects to strengthen democracy through cultural and media. There are also many interesting initiatives involving Swedish civil society, such as the Safe Havens Conference and also the ICORN Network, which is a collaboration between 24 Swedish cities of refuge for artists and writers at risk. So a lot of energy, lots of initiatives to draw upon. Dear delegates, I wish you a very productive, thought-provoking and stimulating meeting. These days will provide important space for dialogue and cooperation, for exchange of experiences, and for creation of synergies around our common goal to strengthen artistic freedom. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the one and only director, executive director of IFACCA, Magdalena Moreno Mujica.
Thank you very much, Kajsa, Ravin. We've been working on our pronunciations. So indeed, my name is Magdalena Moreno Mujica, and I'm the executive director of this wonderful organization known as IFACCA, but with a very long name, our International Federation of Arts Councils and Culture Agencies. In Australia, where the Secretariat is based, it's our tradition to always acknowledge the First Nations on the land that we gather on, in the Australian context in Sydney, on Gadigal land of the Eora Nation. Here, I would like to acknowledge the land we gather on and pay my respects to the Sami people, to their elders past, present and emerging. I also like to acknowledge First Nations people here with us today in this magnificent space, and wait till you see the views, and also to all of those that are joining us via live stream across the world. I will go through some formalities because I think it's important, but I'll be brief. State Secretary of Culture of Sweden, Karin Svanborg-Sjövall. Swedish Ambassador for Human Rights, Democracy and the Rule of Law, Cecilia Ruthström-Ruin. Assistant Director General of Culture of UNESCO, Ernesto Done. UN Special Rapporteur on the field of cultural rights, Alexandra Santaki. Chair of IFACCA and CEO of the Canada Council for the Arts, Simon Bro. Director General of the Swedish Arts Council, Kajsa Ravin. Oluwalake, Chair of the International Programme Advisory Committee. IFACCA members, special mention to our Ukrainian Cultural Foundation, that while not far, it has taken him 2 days to get here. All of our IFACCA members, distinguished delegates, dearest colleagues and friends. Being in this great country, and coming from Chile, I have to acknowledge the Ambassador Gustav Harold Eldestam, a Swedish diplomat, a rather controversial diplomat, who put his life at risk to help over 1,000 Chileans escape the brutality of the Pinochet regime in 1973. I don't know this fact, but I'm pretty sure that those people would not be alive today if it wasn't for him. So we come from near and far, and after 4 years, we've finally reunited. What an honor to be here welcoming you all to the 9th edition of our World Summit with our colleagues at the Swedish Arts Council. IFACCA has the custodianship of the World Summit, and in fact, the first World Summit created IFACCA in Ottawa in 2001. So we're the birth child of the summits. Over the last 2 years, we have worked very hard to prepare for this day with our Swedish colleagues and the great and many partners here. But delivering this summit of this scale and the depth requires a village. And that village is you. Today, we hand over the custodianship of the World Summit to you as a shared responsibility. And I ask that you treat it with care. The World Summit is and will remain a global forum to discuss and debate complex issues of the time. A place to share ideas amongst policymakers, politicians, cultural leaders, academics, and many other important voices, to listen, to exchange, to learn, to reflect. The world has become increasingly complex since our last World Summit in Malaysia in March 2019. Our chair, Simon Bro, spoke on Monday at our Executive Leaders Seminar that we are living in a polycrisis that requires great balancing. With multiple crises from political, geopolitical landscape and divide, the war against Ukraine, the armed conflicts such as in Sudan and Afghanistan, the economic outlook, the weakened social agenda, the climate emergency, the increase in people displaced, and many more. Now, I don't mean to paint a grim picture, but this polycrisis is the backdrop for how the arts and cultural ecology must coexist in this fragile environment. We urgently need this conversation. As custodians, we ask that you enter this space with empathy and care. We gather from over 80 countries with a very diverse context, work and lived experience and belief systems. We don't expect you to find consensus. We ask that you consider all voices and have a solid debate. We recognize that at times you might feel a little uncomfortable. In this spirit of dialogue, we hope this is an enabling space to tackle difficult issues respectfully. We find that the deeper we get into the program, the more comfortable we are to discuss these complex issues. So, a little bit of the flavor of what to expect. The first day of the summit, we will explore different ways in which the notion of artistic freedom can be understood, applied around the world, and include an exploration of different perspectives on key concepts. We've already heard UNESCO's definition, which is our framework, and we will identify challenges and opportunities made manifest by all of these different perspectives. We will review existing tools on which we rely to safeguard artistic freedom, safeguard freedoms of artistic expression and participation in cultural life, and assess their adequacies or inadequacies. And we will place the issue of safeguarding artistic freedom in the context of the global, political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and cultural developments that defined our times. Then we move to day 2, tomorrow. A more actions-oriented discussion. Having spent today unpicking those complexities, tomorrow we focus on rights and responsibilities and look particularly at the social and economic conditions of artists and cultural workers as part of the artistic freedom piece that sometimes get forgotten. The pandemic showed us how fragile our cultural sector is, and particularly its workforce. We will look at our responsibilities and how we maximize opportunities to strengthen and advance freedoms for all. And finally, on day 3, Friday, is where we start to consolidate all these discussions and explore pathways to take back to our work, our context, our lives. The structure of the program is such that all morning sessions are live streamed, so you're all on camera now. However, the afternoon sessions are not. This is to ensure that we can go deeper into the issues in smaller groups and try to create some safe spaces. For this reason, we also ask that you respect the terms of engagement that the afternoon moderators will share with you in each session. We note that about 80 delegates will be speaking. However, we're over 400. That does not mean that they are the only experts in the room. All our delegates here have expertise, knowledge, and lived experience, and the various formats of the summit provide a diversity of opportunity for all delegates to be actively engaged. We will not be able to tackle the issues if we are not open to dialogue. We may not be able to tackle them all, but we will have sessions for you to bring those ideas if you haven't felt they've been covered. Last night we experienced a wonderful evening with the launch of the World Summit and the Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award, with a memorable cultural program thanks to Ruthström-Ruin. The 2023 laureate Laurie Halson Anderson highlighted the importance of storytelling and reading, the power of words in the arts, and the detriment when this is silenced. It made me reflect on how much we need artists and cultural workers to survive this turmoil of multi-crisis. The pandemic was a health catastrophe with the loss of many lives, and it also exacerbated our existing societal fault lines. However, it was also a circuit breaker. It crystallized that many of our operating systems and structures are broken or flawed. As the first summit post-pandemic, I invite you all to think outside the box, to be open to different solutions, to reflect on our journeys, and to collaborate. At IFACCA, we are united in our belief that together we are better equipped to tackle the challenges of today and tomorrow. We believe that no one should feel their life is at risk to create, to express themselves, and to participate in cultural life. We are united in the belief that arts and culture thrive and be recognized by all peoples by their manifold contribution to societies. We congratulate from the bottom of our hearts to Kajsa, Ravin and her incredible team at the Swedish Arts Council for sharing this vision with us, for collaborating, for bringing in their incredible village of across government collaborators and agencies, and especially those in the international cooperation that played a key role to ensuring the breadth of diversity that is in the room from the Global South. To the cultural portfolio, of course, for sharing in this vision, to regional and local governments in Sweden, for partnering institutions, cultural institutions such as Ruthström-Ruin, and for so many to mention that you can see them at the back of our program. The list is very long. To conclude, this is my second World Summit as Executive Director of IFACCA, and I'll leave you with some homework if that's okay. While our context may differ, one thing is clear to me. We are here as shared custodians of the World Summit. You have agency. You have influence. The task at hand is to think what you would take away from the summit by the time we reach Friday, and let's have a conversation about that on Friday. Tack så mycket. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Muchas gracias. Let's start the conversation.